Okay, guys, tonight we're going to start looking at World War II. Can anyone tell me where Hitler is walking in this picture? Now, tonight we're going to only look at pictures, no text. So we need to ask ourselves a few questions involving World War II. The first is, who caused it? Who were the leaders of World War II? And obviously Adolf Hitler is a major part of this. As you know, he wants to expand Germany. He wants to reverse the Versailles Peace Treaty. And he also has aims dealing with the Holocaust of eliminating, in his mind, impure races. Hitler's tag team partner is Benito Mussolini, Il Duce of Italy. And as you remember, these two will sign the Rome-Berlin Axis, which is an agreement before World War II starts. Now, completing this axis is Japan, who will sign the agreement to fight with Italy and Germany. Pictured here is Emperor Hirohito, the Emperor of Japan. Now, as we talked about in class, even though he's in charge, there's a very powerful group of generals who are really running the show in Japan. Here's Joseph Stalin, the General Secretary of the USSR. As you remember, before World War II started, Stalin and Hitler signed a treaty not to fight against each other. However, as you know, Hitler will break this treaty in 1941, meaning Stalin will be Hitler's enemy. Eventually, Stalin and the USSR will ally with the United Kingdom, led by Winston Churchill on the right, and eventually the United States will enter the war and fight alongside the British and the Russians, and they are led by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, president, seated on the left. Now, the biggest difference between the two world wars in terms of the map, as you can see right here, is that the fighting is now taking place in two very different parts of the world. In Europe, as you see right here, and in the Pacific, as you see right here. In Europe, the fighting will feature countries like the USSR, England, France, Germany, Austria, Italy, the United States, whereas in the Pacific, this is mostly Japan versus the United States and the territories that the Japanese have conquered. Now, here's some propaganda from the various countries who participated. The first is Japanese propaganda as they are building their empires. Look how happy everybody looks as Japan is building its empire by conquering Asian nations. Here's some German propaganda. This says, "For the fatherland." You can see Hitler is marching on with some very bright sunshine and a lot of people behind him. You can see the iconic swastika, or the svastika, which is supposed to mean unending life of German blood. On to England, you'll see one of these every day when you come to my class, "Keep Calm and Carry On," which is a British poster for if the Germans ever invaded England. The second is a Winston Churchill poster that's very similar to the Uncle Sam poster from World War I and also World War II. Instead of saying "join the army," it said "you deserve victory." And now for the USA, the iconic Rosie the Riveter on the left, "We can do it." Then on the right, "Don't let that shadow touch them. Buy war bonds." What's the shadow? That's right, the swastika. One of the other big differences in World War II is that cities and civilians will be targeted and attacked. One of the mind-blowing statistics is that 15 million soldiers will die in World War II. 45 million non-soldiers will die in World War II. That's 3 times more soldiers than soldiers who died. So you have a greater chance of dying if you don't fight than if you do. What you're looking at right now is part of London after the Germans bombed it in what's called the London Blitz. Now, what you're looking at right now is a bomb census. All of these red circles are where the Germans dropped bombs on London between October 1940 and June 1941. The number, as you see, like for instance right here, it says 24. That's how many bombs were dropped on this location. So right there, that means 24 bombs were dropped. If you look right here, you can see the Tower Bridge, and you can see that 8 bombs were dropped at one end of the Tower Bridge. If you zoom out a bit, you get a sense of just how many places were bombed in London. If you keep zooming out, you can see that number grows. And eventually, if you keep zooming out, this is what London looks like after the Nazis bombed it in less than a year. It's an amazing graphic. Now, this is not to say that the Germans didn't suffer devastation as well. This is the city of Cologne, or Köln, and if you enter my classroom, you'll see a poster on the right that's a painting of a cathedral. Well, the cathedral's right here. The bombing took place all around the cathedral, and you can see things that are just completely destroyed, including this bridge right here and all of these buildings over here. Even worse than Cologne is a place called Dresden, where the United States used firebombing, sort of an early napalm type technology, to completely destroy it. Look at these buildings. They're completely empty. It's just such a scary thought that this used to be inhabited by a lot of people. Now, famously, the Japanese attacked, in a surprise attack, a sneak attack, the United States territory, Hawaii, at the naval base of Pearl Harbor. And this is when they attacked a ship called the USS Arizona, and it was a direct hit, meaning they hit the ammunition room, which is why there's such a large explosion. The USS Arizona is still at the bottom of the harbor, and if you go there today, this is what the memorial looks like. And you're actually looking down on that boat. Oil still leaks to the surface today, as you can see right here, and the sailors who were on that boat are still on that boat under the water. This is their tomb. And by the end of the war, by far the biggest explosion and the use of destruction of cities was when the United States won the race to develop the atomic bomb. And this is at the city of Hiroshima. And this is what Hiroshima looked like afterwards. And of course, a third main difference of this war has to do with the Nazis and the Holocaust. This is what a concentration camp would look like as you were on a train being brought to this concentration camp. Now, this sign above the gate entering the concentration camp is a common sign in concentration camps, and it translates to mean work will set you free, in order to try to give the inmates, the prisoners, some hope. Sadly, it was simply a lie. Most people who entered the concentration camps never left. These are some pictures of the Holocaust. These are European Jews because they're wearing the Yellow Star of David, which they had to do thanks to the German Nuremberg laws. And if they didn't, they were in a lot of trouble. Probably what's happening right here is that these Jews are being gathered together, either to go to the ghetto, which is a section of the city where the Jews were forced to live, or they were being sent from the ghetto to the concentration camp. Really, really sad stuff here. And this is a picture inside the concentration camp where you see a lot of women who have to sleep in the same sort of like bunk beds without a lot of comfort. So you can see it's very, very, very crowded. When you look at the big picture of the Holocaust, and you can see just the devastation that it did to national population of Jews, it's just it's unthinkable, really. If you look at the statistics, Poland lost 90% of its Jewish population. They had 3 million Jews before the war. They had 100,000 Jews after the war. So it's just a really heartbreaking element of the Second World War. And let's also remember that of the Holocaust victims, 6 million were Jews, and there are another 5 million who are non-Jews. These include Russians or Polish non-Jews, homosexuals, gypsies, physically and mentally handicapped peoples. So really the Nazi idea to get rid of groups that they considered to be impure or less than pure was such a scary realization that it turned from an idea to an action. Now, on Monday, we'll look at how the war starts and where it starts and why. But a little sneak preview is that the Germans will move very fast. This is called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. And their army is called the Wehrmacht. So the Blitzkrieg is the strategy, the Wehrmacht is their army. And their goal is to move as fast as possible to defeat their enemies as fast as possible. And it works really well towards the beginning of the war for them. And this is part of their Luftwaffe, their air force, that is obviously very, very destructive and powerful as well. Now, just like we saw in World War I, the German U-boats, the Unterseeboots, the submarines, are also very effective, even more effective than they were in the First World War. So, in looking at World War II, there are a lot of movies that you may be interested in. And these are movies that are very good and they really show what life was like. The movies are on this. I'm not going to read it to you. But this is just really a small handful of good World War II movies. Obviously, some of these films are very violent, so you may want to watch them with your parents or ask your parents if you can watch them first. But they will give you a lot of sort of insight as to what people are thinking about in the Second World War. Okay, well, I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.